Welcome to WROL Broadcast. We are doing our July edition of our Endgame PvP tier list. Today I have with me Loot, M4, Sheriff Lobo, and what name did you want to go by again, Brian? Is Brian good? Or Commander?
Yeah, Brian.
Okay. So we are going to go ahead and go through the new characters that we have listed, and we had a few that we want to revisit. It's a little bit shorter list. Also, just as a quick side note, we had a few people ask, we're going to go through a quick listing, and anybody feel free to interrupt me if I'm not saying this correct, but we do have the tier listings. I know some people just look at the image, so it's a little harder, but if you're listening to the episode or you're looking at the Google spreadsheet version, we have the S tier, which is the best tier. Basically, characters in this mode are borderline OP, or they're just some of the best characters in the game, and they fit in most scenarios, be either as a leader or just as a obscene character. The A tier characters are just great characters, have little flaws. They won't necessarily win a match by themselves like an S tier character would, but they're still a top shelf tune, and they're definitely worthy of devoting resources. The B tier tunes, they're solid tunes. They usually need to be on some type of team that complements their abilities, so they don't quite, bring the pain, but they do work in a lot of different comps, depending on what their skill set is, and they're still a solid character. The C tier tunes are characters usually that you probably don't want to spend resources on unless you particularly like that character, or or they only fit into like a very specific comp. Kind of like Mirror Master is very good with Clayface, but outside of that, he's pretty terrible. D tier tunes are usually characters that pretty much need a rework. They're pretty bad. There's almost always a better option than them, but you can still make them work. And then the F tunes, which we reserve for only a very small segment of the character population, are just terrible. And we don't like them. Remember, this is for endgame PvP. So some of these characters, and we try to note this a little bit, characters like, for example, Bane is S tier when you're like gear 10, but at endgame PvP, the highest modes, endgame siege, or you're playing against, teams that are the highest level, this is what we see. And, most of us are competing usually at the highest tiers of PvP, so these are the characters that work best for us. So you may have a little bit different opinion depending on what level of PvP you play in. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. First, we'll start with, let me get down here. First character we're going to look at is the Flash. I wanted to put him on the list because we originally had him as a B, but I've been facing him a lot, and especially the Rebirth versions, unless I have like Wonder Girl or a character that's designed to take him out, he brings the pain. He really attacks like a maniac, and he can do a ton of damage, even to blue characters. I mean, even does damage to my Rebirth 2 Donna Troy. Kage, do you have any, you had him originally, I think, before as a, yeah, you still have him, you had him as a B. Do you have any changed thoughts over this month?
No, he is annoying, but I just can't get over the fact that he ignores awareness, which is fine, but
I actually like that better now. I actually took
he just doesn't open up, really? Yeah,
Mhm.
he just doesn't open up your team to like his teammates to, crash through your awareness,
But the reason I don't really mind that so much is a lot of times he'll buff on turn one, especially even the AI, the enemy AI, and then he'll start attacking. Then you have other characters that remove the buffs or the taunts, and then he just attacks endlessly. Like, I mean, I've had a couple matches where I just never get a turn. He just keeps going.
Yeah, I actually can see that scenario. Like he can, dominate a match depending on RNG. but that's still a lot of RNG for him to take over. I think he's a very high B character. He's solid. He's definitely worthy to take resources, but it's just not enough for me personally to tide him over to A.
I think M4, you had him originally as an A character. Do you still stand by that, or you think he's a B?
I think he's a borderline A or B. Like you said, he's great on defense, and also because he's a great counter to Penguin. But for offense, I don't really like him so much because of the RNG factor. It's hard to plan your game if you don't know what he's gonna do.
Sheriff Lobo, what would be your opinion as the king of Siege? Your opinion is going to hold a little bit of weight here.
I think I would put him as a solid A. I think he's really good against red tanks like Bane and Barda and Penguins because a lot of his punches are out of turn. They don't activate those, like the Barda and Bane's buff up when they get attacked. Since a lot of his attacks are out of turn, you can kind of get around that. I think that's pretty awesome. And also, on those out-of-turn attacks, he does those so much, they don't also activate Wonder Girl's whip, so we can kind of get around that on a lot of his out-of-turn attacks. So he can be, pretty tough to face.
Brian, your thoughts?
So it looks like I'm the tiebreaker already. I think I'm leaning more towards an A for Flash because he does take a little bit of time to get going, but like you said, once he starts hitting out of turn, taking turns back to back, he can take over a match and win the match for you. So I think for that reason alone, I would put him in the A tier rather than B.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but he is easily farmable, correct?
Yeah, he has a couple of nodes in Legendary.
So we've tried to clean that up because I know that was a common complaint amongst many of the listeners. So we are trying to correct that. I think he's a solid character, especially if you're early game, to pick him up early and go ahead and gear him out because he holds up. So I think, May, you were leaning that way anyway, so I think we'll go ahead and mark him as an A. And let's move on to the next one. We are revisiting Harley Quinn Mad Jester. Kage, I'll let you start on this one.
Yeah, she's solid. She's gonna be one of the F2Ps or early taunts or tanks that you're gonna be utilizing in the game. But as you get into late game, there's gonna be a lot of counters for her, especially with the new reworked Hal Jordan, who's also as prevalent. Steppenwolf makes short work of her. Cyborg Superman, Cyborg himself. There's a lot of characters
Reworked
that can.
Superboy.
Yeah, Superboy really takes her out. Yeah, there's a lot of anti-evasion, a lot of greens that can just really mess her up. And even the hero evasions, those starting evasions, you can't reliably have Harley dodge Power Girl anymore unless she's on a Batgirl team. And even Batgirl teams are starting to wane from the meta as well. So for that reason, I would move her down to an A tier character and then S.
M4, what would you say?
I share Kage's thoughts. She's a victim of the times. There's a lot of counters for evasion, and yeah, Superboy is like a great counter to the Batgirl, Harley Quinn teams. And also, it's like Wonder Girl is not enough to protect the team anymore. So that's why she's an A for me at the moment.
Sheriff, what would be your thoughts? A or S, or kind of where do you fall?
I really struggled with this one because I can see both sides of the argument. With Hal and Superboy in particular, she's definitely nowhere near the threat that she used to be. But she can still totally wreck you if you don't plan for it. So you've got to bring somebody to shut her down turn one. Like you got to use Hal to, stun her or take all those evasions off of her, especially when she's in conjunction with Batgirl. So I'm kind of tempted to leave her as a S. I voted 4.9. I don't even know if you're supposed to do anything
Yeah.
with increments of 0.5. So that was kind of where I was at. I
What do
guess
you,
if I had to vote, I would say still keep her as a S.
what would you say, Brian?
So the argument it seems against her is she has a lot of counters, but with having just talked about Flash, like I can think of a number of counters to him that would stop him right in his tracks and drop him down like to B or C tier. Like Princess of Themyscira, like she puts her what's it called? So he can't get his speed up, and he won't be able to do anything in the match. So
Right, but that also keeps
uh,
him from being an S. Not there's a big difference between being, B or C versus A or S.
right, but what I'm saying is if we're looking at them based on their counters, I think just about every character in the game has a number of counters. She might have a few more now than she did a couple of months ago, but I still think she's one of the better red tunes in the game. So I would vote to keep her in S tier.
Where I struggle with the S tier with her is that so on defense you do have to bring a counter, so that kind of leads her to almost be S tier, but on offense is where I have the problem with her being an S tier because my Harley Quinn I don't think has ever dodged anything ever. So it doesn't matter if I have an evasion or not, she just instantly gets killed by any green that I face.
And she only seems S tier if she's under Batgirl lead. If
Yeah.
not, she absolutely does nothing.
So it looks like we'll move down to A with 2
I mean,
leaning that way.
there are those occasional Wonder Girl comps that protect Harley enough that if you're not playing smart, um, you'll get whipped to death and then you'll get punched to death by Harley.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's an A, not a super. She isn't going to come and change the game most of the time. Especially if you're bringing her on defense, sometimes she can be. But I think if you're bringing her, um, so we'll move her to A for now, unless we all have a change of heart. But next up on our list, some people wanted us to talk about Mr. Miracle. We were a little harsh and voted him as an F. Um, I'm probably leaning towards bumping him up a little bit myself. We'll start with Sheriff. What's your opinion on Mr. Miracle? What would you rank him?
My I would have no problem keeping him as an F, but maybe he's not as bad as some of those other Fs like Blue Beetle. Lord have mercy. My wish is that I would have kept him ungeared and used him as a slow gear. I don't think that I have any reason whatsoever to ever pick him or use him on my team, especially now with Superboy. So I would definitely not go higher than a D.
Brian, what would you say for Mr. Miracle?
Between D tier and F tier, we're kind of splitting hairs. Like he's not a good character, and he needs a rework to have any relevance. So D is fine, F is fine. Yeah.
Luke, I mean not Luke. M4. You like him a little more than I think the rest of the crew.
I don't like him. I just don't hate him as much as the others.
Yeah,
He was not unusable. But Sheriff brings out a good point. There's really no reason to bring him, even with Barda.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a D. I don't think he's quite F because while there's no reason to bring him, none of the D characters there really is, and at
True.
least he is semi-usable compared to a couple of the F characters like Roz.
Yes,
So
I agree with that.
we'll move him to a D. Not exactly, great, but he's still like you guys
Well,
said, he would have been better.
he does counter the invisible comps like Deadshot and Red Robin.
Yeah, I guess he can serve a mild purpose
Right, if you
on
don't
a
have
lot.
Superboy.
Yeah, if it's an
Yeah.
alliance day, basically, you could bring him and not feel like you're completely wasting a spot. So I mean, it's a low bar, but
Yeah.
all right. So let's move to Penguin. I wanted to bring him up just because, and I know M4, you're going to strongly disagree with me. Um,
Yes.
I just don't feel like he's S tier because he's one of those characters in Siege. He never taunted for me anyway, so he pretty much didn't serve a purpose on defense. And when I do face him, I just ignore him, attack everybody else, and then kill him last. Like I don't feel like he's a character I never feared during this whole Siege. And I faced him so many times, used him a ton. And I mean, I feel like he's an A character, I don't feel like he's a character that takes over a battle for any. Every now and again, he can be really annoying, but you can play around him. I mean, you don't even have to bring special characters to counter him. That's kind of my
I'll bring
bar
some
for that.
counterpoints that I have not mentioned before.
Hmm.
All right. One, you don't bring Penguin to win. You bring him to not lose.
Right, but I don't feel like he makes that big of a difference for me.
And then the one thing that he can do that no other character can do is he can stun. He can taunt for you even if he's stunned. Right. So I know of a few people in Siege that just gave up because it takes forever to kill him, and then his other teammates are the ones who's going to kill you slowly.
Sheriff Lobo, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on him.
I would not put him as an S personally for me. I think he was probably one of the, or probably the MVP for this last Siege, but one of the reasons for that was that, Black Lightning, he did some decent damage, but you didn't really have a high damage green to take him out. So I think because of the bonus tunes was one of the reasons he was such a pain if you're trying to use all of those. If I think about a S tier, one of the things that I don't like about him is that he can't, like, for me, for an S tier, you have to have some offense, and I don't think that, you have to bring another blue killer if you're going to have Penguin on your team. So, in going back to what M4 said about you don't bring him to win, you bring him not to lose, to me that sounds more like an A than an S.
I'm curious about your thoughts on Barda because they kind of fill the same niche. They don't do damage, they just sustain your team.
I feel the same way about Bart as I do Penguin. She's awesome to soak up damage, but
Barda can do a lot more damage than Penguin. She can kill things.
yeah, but even she does more damage than Penguin, but still, if I have her on my team, I bring another blue killer.
But you don't have to. You could, like Penguin, you can never, like if you're in a fight with a strong blue, match is stalemated. Barda will eventually kill them.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll give you that.
That's my difference between the two.
And the other thing, too, is that Barda is giving your team meter up constantly, more often than Penguin's giving the enemy meter down. And there's also the fact that she can stun you. So if she's stunning you on a key play, that could be the difference between getting her down to, like, no health or she recovers to full health.
Brian, your thoughts on Penguin?
I completely agree with Sheriff Lobo. Like, Penguin is great at one thing, but to be S tier, I think you have to be great at more than just one thing.
I think that settles it, M4.
I just wish Loot was here.
I figured I'd take advantage of this while he wasn't.
I guess I'll have to wait 1 month.
Well, on Penguin's defense, a lot of characters like AW Lex rely on their crit damage to do something. And for me, when I was using Penguin during Siege, I was using him just to slow down AW Lex while I was working on the entire rest of his lineup, just to give me some time.
I mean, he's great. I mean, he's definitely an A-class character, but I just think he's not quite S. And especially too, if you're level 70, gear 11, he dies a little faster than you'd like. Like he needs to be L5 level 80 to really get his full package.
Yeah, I don't feel too strongly about Penguin, so I'm fine with moving down to an A. But yeah.
All right, let's move on to the first of the new characters, but after playing him for a while, I really started to like him. So for me, he's slightly above an A. Um, I know some matches he doesn't do anything, but majority of the time, even with my RNG, once he gets going, he can really wreck a match. So I'm pretty high on him. Kage, what are your thoughts on Stripe?
I feel like the 5 strength up on his passive is just a bonus to his kit. His kit is really more about call assists more than it is trying to be a poor man's Etrigan. I think that's the wrong way to look at him. I think he's a very good character. He's fun. But to me, he's just an A-kid character. He's not doing a whole lot of stuff outside of just damage, but he's doing a lot of cool call assists, and they're
And he's tanky.
more
He can
reliable.
take a hit.
Yeah, he can take a hit. I know Black Lightning had trouble taking him down during the siege, but I just don't see him being used by a lot of people in Wraith now because he has so many options. But if you're just starting out, he's definitely a great character to invest in.
So what score would you give him? Because you didn't have one in here.
I'd put him as a 4.
M4, your thoughts?
He's a solid B for me. Other than damage, he really doesn't do much. He's kind of like a Black Adam Etrigan in between. He kind of attacks after a kill, and then he sort of kind of buffs like Etrigan, but not consistent. If he did that like 100%, he would be an A tier for me. But right now, I don't see myself bringing him over like Alex, because he doesn't have a means to deal with the problems. Let's say an evasion, he cannot purge. He just does damage, and I'm not big on dudes that just do damage. And also Battlestar Galactica called, they want their silent back.
Sheriff, what do you feel about Stripe?
Now, when I listen to M4's points, I kind of agree with that. But I had him as an A originally, and I think I might keep that because he can, once he gets going, if you get one kill, then he just keeps going. And he was pretty awesome in Siege with those revives because you could, take out somebody, they would revive, and then he would jump right back on top of them and take them out again. And also, he's really helpful in PvE if you're trying to do the missions or even the hero challenges. He's a quick way to get through some of those.
Brian, what would you rank him since your loot today?
Yeah. So M4 compared him to 2 S-tier characters in Etrigan and Black Adam. So saying B tier doesn't compute for me.
I'll burn.
I think it's because he's a red character and there's so many S-tier red characters that are ahead of him, but I still think he's a solid A character.
I'm gonna answer that. Right. So he kind of wants to be a Black Adam, but he cannot toast anyone out of the gates like Black Adam does, right? So that's my gripe with him. And then
But he's a lot
for the
less squishy than Black Adam.
That is
Because
true.
he gets the overheal. I mean, he takes punches from Power Girl, which you don't see too many Reds being able to do that.
That
Is
is
Black
also
Adam
true.
calling call assists? Is that Black Adam doing call assists? No, but Stripe is.
He doesn't need a call assist. He just does everything on his own, right?
Well, the call assist, I will say though, there's a lot of cases where I'm attacking a green character that I know I'm not going to do a lot of damage with Stripe, and he'll call assist on one of my blues. But I've had him kill Hal Jordan Green Lantern by himself. I mean, he doesn't always do it, and granted he takes ramp up to do that, but you just don't see too many Reds that can do stuff like that.
I'm not gonna lose sleep if he's an A. I just don't think he's as high as the other A's, like Say and Lex, who can deal with a lot of problems.
He's probably a little more borderline. He's a lower tier A than some of the other A's, but I mean, in most there's a lot of matches I would take him over Lex if I don't need Lex's particular ability because he's faster. Especially on these auto teams. Alright, so moving on. Let's go to one of the reworks, White Lantern Sinestro. I had him at a border. I struggled with him because I think he's an A. He's borderline A B, probably a lower A, but I think he's probably an A. He stinks outside a leader, but as a leader, he's pretty darn useful. And if they ever fix the star system, he's an A without question. Let's do Brian first on this one. Have you tested White Lantern Sinestro? What are your thoughts on him?
I haven't tested him a lot, but I looked over his kit, and with these rankings being based on endgame PvP, so much of his utility is based around reviving your team. And as you said, like, that really hurts your stars in the end. So he's definitely not an S. I don't know if he could be an A because of that. But outside of that, I think he has one big damage ability, and outside of that, it's just utility of keeping the team alive or reviving. So I would go B personally.
Sheriff, how about you?
I vote him a solid A. I think that with his rework, his heals are good, and his ability to deal with debuffs is also really helpful. Getting the shield, especially in Siege, him and Penguin together, that was, a really tough combo to face. I really like to play red alerts. I do my red alerts every day and enjoy those tremendously. And he has been my kind of go-to leader since his rework in red alerts to get those heals. And then, he can revive when you have one of those stupid red alert things where they, take out your fully overhealed, shielded character with one hit, and he'll, bring her back. So
you don't auto your red alerts every day like the rest of us?
no, that's probably my favorite thing other than Siege to do in the game is to do red alerts.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually on board with Sheriff. I don't auto red alerts. I just like to mess around. I even used red alerts to practice with the Siege characters.
That is a good strategy. All right, so Kage, since you're already talking, what's your thoughts?
I got to add on to Sheriff, what he's saying, because I thought I was being clever in Siege, where I would just stun Penguin and leave him alone. Oh, hell no, I was wrong. Penguin got the shield, and I learned the hard way not to stun Penguin while White Lantern's on the team. So, but outside of the debuffs, you actually want the turn meter on your characters just so they can shed the debuff faster. He brings a lot of utility with the revives. I've ran him a lot of times in the Blitz and Wraith comps, and I got really good defense logs. The difference between him and Constantine, I feel like Constantine doesn't bring as much utility. You got to bring other utility characters like Swamp Thing to make the most out of Constantine and his call assists. With White Lantern, he's doing a lot of revives, buff purging, turn meter and shield for your team. So he's helping keep your team alive and reviving. So I think he's solid. And for me, someone who sandbags his roster in Wraith, I can afford to lose characters and still score high points.
And M4, you're the last.
Okay. If it wasn't for the star system, he'd be a solid S. Okay. So one thing that's good for him is that unlike World's Greatest Detective, his 100% is not like he brings you up to 100%. He adds like 100%, so your team goes faster. And then they're also getting death immunity, and that is great. And then also, now that he, as a leader, now that Atrocitus is fixed, imagine him as leader. And
Oh man, I haven't even tried that yet.
As a member, he will enrage your team, give you 15% turn meter, and you can't kill any of them.
Oh, man. And Atrocitus, I just faced one a little bit ago.
What? Can you edit that out? I don't want to face that. I did try that twice, and I hate it. Because I don't want people to see it. Now I mentioned it.
Oh, it's going to be so annoying. It's like, yeah, Junior's coming out. Oh, I forgot. I was going to put Junior. I was going to try to upgrade him on this. We might have to, if we have time. So I think we all agree. Solid A,
This is yep.
except for and I think except for Brian thinks he might be a B, but he's he's borderline A B. Definitely, probably I'd probably lean A myself, just for the reasons everybody said. And he's also a character I would definitely put as an early upgrade if you obtain his shards. If you're playing in lower tier PvP and if you lose 3 characters and you're still getting 13 points, great character. Can't go wrong with that. Next on the list, let's go to Stargirl. This was a tough one for me. I think I went with a C in the end. There's a lot of things I like about her kit, but the main thing I was excited for was dealing with Power Girl, which she does okay against Power Girl. But I was really hoping that she would make Wonder Girl like completely neutered. And the problem is Wonder Girl passively removes all the strength downs and then just whips her into oblivion. And my biggest thing is Stargirl will die if Wonder Girl even looks at her in the wrong way. She's instantly dead. In pretty much any strong blue. I mean, I've Black Adam, his AoE has killed her 100% of the time. If she doesn't have an awareness or something protecting her, it doesn't matter how much shield or overheal she has, she's going to die. Doesn't matter if she has immunity, it's just she's always dead. M4, what do you think?
All right, there's my unmute button.
I was just
M4 doesn't have her geared. M4 don't have her geared, bro.
All right, yeah. So full
He's never
disclosure,
touched her. She's never seen playtime for M4.
yes. So like I said, full disclosure, she's my
Okay.
slow gear. I'm gonna base all my comments on Ballsies and Hate's videos and facing her. Okay. So she's supposed to stop strength characters, right? So she's kind of like the second Manta, flipping buffs into debuffs. However, Manta just dismantles the enemy team, whereas Stargirl, she just kind of like annoys them. Wonder Girl still whips around, purges people, and then still punches her out. And like you mentioned, Power Girl, she's just getting tickled. So she's not doing a very good job of what she's supposed to do. She's not neutering any of those strength up characters. I would say Alan Scott does a much better job at it, and has damage to boot.
And survivability.
Sure. Yep. She's a C character for me.
Sheriff, what would you say?
Yeah, I agree with him. I think I voted her as a B, but I would probably vote her down as a C. Now that I have her, I do have her at L5, and she's not any better at surviving and doing her thing at L5 than she was at L2. So, C.
Brian?
I agree with everyone. I don't have her geared either, so I'm going strictly off her kit. But her second ability also is very strange to me, that she gives just shield to one ally when there are so many characters who give shield to their entire team. So it just...
Yeah, I wish that would have been group.
Yeah, it's just she doesn't quite do what I think she was intended to do, and so I think C is right where she belongs.
That ability is actually pretty useful, but the problem is that if there's any even remotely strong blues, you have to use it on her or she's going to die. Like there's no protecting her. Kage, I don't remember if you get her, but I know you've seen a lot of video.
No, I have her geared.
Oh, okay.
I took the plunge and committed to a full gear 11 for her last night. Just because I had her at gear 10. I was testing her, but she was getting stomped by blues, dude. So I said, you know what? Let me take her to gear 11 and see if she survives better. Maybe a little bit she survives better. And I wanted to try and like her. I had her like a really low B character initially because there are a few matches where it's pretty clutch, where she just turns all of Power Girl's strength ups into strength downs, and then she doesn't get the death immunity, and I can just wipe her out from there. But I will say that you do have to adjust your playstyle a little bit with her. She's not an easy character to use, especially because she just dies so much. The main thing is to bring heavy-hitting characters with her, but if she's a control character, you can't really use control characters to try and complement her. So it's tough. I'd say she's borderline B, C. I'm not going to lose sleep if you guys put her as C, but or B. She's okay. If you're low on options for dealing with Power Girl and Wonder Girl, you're better off just going with the meta route instead of trying to go for style points with Stargirl.
Yeah, that's the thing. The characters I think she's best designed to get rid of. She doesn't do a great job. She's better against. She is halfway decent against Bane. She's okay against Batgirl, but the problem is Batgirl's initial turn, first turn, those strength ups do not get changed. So it's future strength ups that she'll change, but not the early ones.
You mean Batwoman?
Batwoman. I always call her Batgirl. Batwoman. So she's pretty good against her, but early she doesn't neuter her like you'd think.
Yeah, she's tough to use.
All right,
Yeah.
Well, moving on, let's go to our last one, which is Superboy. And he went from worst to pretty darn good. I was tempted to put him as an S. I probably would lean more towards an A just because he's not a take over a character kind of character for me. But I do really like him. Really solid character. Kage, I know you're really high on him. You didn't put a rating in. What would you rate him?
Probably a B.
Okay. Wow. I was expecting you to rate him higher as much as you use him.
No, I use him a lot, but I feel like I need to take other characters to really take full advantage of him. Just because, yeah, cool, I stunned someone, but I need to take someone in to deal with that stunned character. He's not doing too much damage. He does make my team better, but that's only situational. So his kit is all about giving your team meter whenever someone's invisible or is taunting. And that's great, but some characters or some team comps don't utilize taunts or awareness. So why bring him at all? And the other thing is, too, is that even before taunters and invisible characters, he just wasn't that big of a need to. Now with his rework, I'm just saying it's easier to deal with those teams that utilize those things, but it's not game-changing for me personally.
Sheriff, I know you really like him, so what would be...
Yeah, I think I would vote him as an S because right now he and Hal Jordan are the first two greens that I go to. So if I have greens on my team, it's probably going to be Hal and Superboy. I think that he does a lot of different things. His defense and his damage are both pretty good. He can survive, and he's not a super powerhouse like Power Girl, but he's not anything to sneeze at either. He can do some pretty decent damage. He's got true sight, so like the Castaway Green Arrow, who's a pain in everybody's ass, he deals with him pretty good, I think. And then can't miss on his basic is with a purge is good. So stun can't miss. So if you've got a powerful blue that you think is going to take him out, you can stun them till you can deal with them later. I think he's great.
M4?
I'm with Sheriff Lobo, but not quite as high as him. So I think he's a solid A. So it's almost always there's a taunter or an invis tune on the other side. So he's almost constantly having his true sight, which is unique. He's the only one who does that, right? Out of the gate, he would have true sight and can deal with problems straight out of the gate. So Batgirl teams are a thing of the past because of him. And then he's stunned, and then he'll just punch people. So, and then the last thing that is really good about him is that 10% turn meter to all the teammates. It's clutch. It just makes your team go faster.
Brian, what would you say about Superboy?
So he's a character that when I got him, I never geared him, and I was waiting to see how his rework went before putting any resources. So I haven't geared him up, but I've faced him a couple of times. It seems like he's a character that does a lot of things really well, but isn't the best in the game at like one particular thing. So to me, that's more of an A character than an S character.
All right, it sounds like we're pretty much on A, with Sheriff a little higher. If Loot was here, I might be ranked a little higher because I think he's super high on him as well. So I think that will wrap it up. And thanks again, Brian, for updating the art. So we'll have this out by the time you're hearing this. Probably we'll have Stargirl out already. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Andrei for O3. Thank you for listening to WROL Broadcast. If you like the show, please consider becoming a patron and earn extra perks by going to patreon.com/WROL Broadcast. And by the way, buying 3 packs and saying that's the same as being a free-to-play player is like having a cake-only diet.